Welcome back to Julie's Village. I'm so glad that you decided to join us today. In this episode, we're going to talk about the process of supports. Different people manifest needs for supports at different times in their lives. So, we're going to talk about lots of different stages where we might see a need for additional supports arise and what that looks like. There are two main programs of support for individuals identified as having some kind of disability. The first one is the Individualized Family Service Plan. This is for children from birth to age 3 who are identified as having some kind of disability. This identification usually takes place in the medical field, either at the hospital when a child is born or as they're going to their wellness checkups. The medical professionals are really looking to see, are these children meeting their milestones? If they're not meeting their milestones at the expected date, how big is that gap? They're looking for those milestones in social and communication, for gross motor and fine motor, those cognitive skills, basic cognitive functioning. If they see that there is a significant delay, they will probably refer you to a program that does these IFSPs. The model for an IFSP is for a therapist of some kind to come to a family's home and work on educating the family to know what they can do to help those children meet those milestones in whatever areas there is a delay. Once they reach school age, starting with preschool all the way up until the age of 21, individuals who have been identified as having some kind of disability are serviced on an individualized education program. That is coordinated through the school, with you as the parent being a very valuable team member in designing their education plan. Individualized education programs, or IEPs, cover students anywhere from preschool all the way through the age of 21 in the 18 to 21 program. A student can qualify for an IEP at any stage in their education except for this 18 to 21 program. That one, they would have already been on an IEP in high school in order to qualify for that 18 to 21 program. At the preschool level, identification usually takes place through screeners that are run through the school district. The school district will select a location, maybe a local school, and have certain dates throughout the year that they will run these screeners on. Again, they're looking for a gap between where students should be with those expected developmental milestones compared to where they actually are. If it's a significant gap, then a student would qualify for a preschool IEP. If a child was on an IFSP and are now school-aged, a transition team would meet to determine if an IEP is necessary for a student to continue to make adequate growth towards those expected milestones, and they would start at 3 in a preschool program. At the elementary school level, if a child already had an IEP in preschool, then once again there would be a transition meeting to determine how the team can best meet the student's needs as they start at the elementary level. These meetings are typically held at the school that the student is going to be going to so that that team can get to know the student. And they will review what services were provided at preschool to see how that can best be matched in that elementary school setting. Same thing happens in the transition from elementary school to middle school or junior high. At this stage, IEPs also have a little bit of a transition where the focus is a little bit more on future, looking ahead to what does this student want to do when they grow up? What career are they looking at? And is everything that they're doing in their education aligning as best as it can with helping them to be prepared for that career? That continues with them through high school. And once again, there's a transition meeting from middle school to high school, again, usually at the school that the student will be going to in that following year. And then finally, that 18 to 21 program is an extension for students who are not quite ready to be out in the vocational fields yet, or some kind of college program, and they need a little bit of additional support before they're ready for that. The team again will identify what this looks like. Will they have some vocational training? Will they have some training in applying for schools, things like that? At the 18, as they go through their 18 to 21 program, the team will also usually look to see what is most appropriate for them going forward, and they'll be a resource to families and parents in knowing where they can look for options for their child as they are entering adulthood. I'm going to further break down the timeline on what you can expect as your child participates in these programs. If your child is on an IFSP, there will be an annual report where you will look back over the goals that had been previously set and see how your child made progress towards it. Then make new goals and benchmarks for where you would like to see your child next and what's reasonable to see your child be able to do within a year. An IEP also has an annual review, which is very similar. You look at the progress that they made towards their goals and benchmarks in each category, and then you look at what those next goals should be for the upcoming year. When we talk about the year, we're talking about the date of the implementation of the IFSP or the IEP, not necessarily the school year. You will meet at least once a year with the team, but again, it will be according to the implementation of the IEP or the IFSP. In addition, there is an initial eligibility for both the IFSP and IEPs to determine if your child is eligible for these services. And every 3 years, at least, it can be more frequent, but at least every 3 years, there will be an eligibility redetermination review. And that is where you will decide as a team, do we need to do further testing to see either if a child is still eligible, or do we just need to see if their plan is in line with their current needs and strengths? And so you would conduct another series of assessments and information gathering to see, again, is the child still eligible, and do they have all of the things in place that they need to have in place. We previously discussed eligibility meetings, including initial eligibilities and redetermination of eligibility meetings. In order for a child to receive support through an IFSP or an IEP, the team must determine that they have one of these disabilities in one of these categories. There are 13 main categories and a 14th category with a caveat. Autism, deafblindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, specific learning disability, speech or language impairment, traumatic brain injury, visual impairment, or developmental delay. These categories are all explained in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We won't go over each individual one today, but you can research any of these under Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and find the specific criteria. That can give you an idea if this is an area of concern that you might want to address with your child's school if they haven't already brought it up with you, or if your child hasn't already qualified for services. Developmental delay I will talk a little bit about. Developmental delay is the only category that a student can age out from. By the age of 10, the team needs to determine what is causing the delay. If it truly was just a delay, they should have caught up with where they should be by the time that they reach age 10. If they didn't catch up, there's some underlying cause that's impacting their development, and that needs to be determined by the time that they turn 10. Schools will usually have a determination for a new category by the time a student ends the grade that they're in when they are 9 years old. A question that frequently comes up in eligibility meetings is, what is a 504 plan, and how do I know if my child needs a 504 plan or an IEP or neither one? A 504 plan is referring to Section 504 of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which says that people with disabilities need to have reasonable accommodations made to help them to access their environment, including an educational environment. A team determines what level of support a child needs by answering these 3 questions. The first one is there a disability? That's referring back to those 13 or 14 eligibility categories as determined by IDEA. A child must meet the criteria in at least one of those categories in order for the team to be able to answer yes to this one. The next one is there an adverse impact on your child's education? So if there isn't a disability determined, but you do see that the team does see that there are holes and gaps, the team would then set up a level of intervention supports. It could be in social and behavioral skills, or it can be in academic skills, whatever your child needs. If there is a disability present and there is an adverse impact on your child's education, meaning that they are not making reasonable gains to be where they should be with their peers as they go through school, then they might need some accommodations made to help them to make those reasonable gains. If all they need is those accommodations to be able to make those gains, then the team would stop right there at the 504 plan, and they would draft up a plan to meet of what accommodations would be needed to help the student to better access their environment. This might be that they just need to have more opportunities to move around throughout the day, or they might need longer to complete their assignments. They can do the same assignment as everybody else, they just need longer, or maybe they need to do fewer problems on the page. The third question is there a need for specially designed instruction? That means my child can't meet reasonable gains at what is being presented in the classroom or how it's being presented. They need it presented either in a very different way, or they need different materials presented to them at this time. If that is the case and you're able to answer, the team answers yes to all 3, then a child qualifies for an IEP. This was a basic overview of the process of how supports are provided to individuals whose needs fall within those 13 to 14 categories. In future episodes, we'll dive deeper into specific parts of this process, but we'll also talk about things outside of this process, including strategies and supports, community outreach, and different ways that we as individuals can continue to support this village. If any of this information was helpful to you, please like, subscribe, share it with others, help get the word out there to help others in our community that need support. Thank you, and I'll see you next time at Julie's Village.